The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm so thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday morning. We've got a lot of ground to cover today and we do have Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet live in the studio this morning. So if you are wanting to ask her a question, you have the ability to do that right now and throughout this next hour. In fact, Traven is going to show you, the fabulous Traven, by the way, is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us, some of the different ways that you can have your question heard on the show and potentially answered. So please take a look at what Traven is offering right now. And I'll remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, there's a lot of different things to do. Just, find the things that you like on the page and the way that you want it to work. You can search topics. You can watch the live show. You can comment directly from our page in the chat that's at the bottom of the page. Just click on the chat button. It opens a box and you can type and hit enter and it shows up here on the screen. There's about a 2-minute lag. So write in early and often. We get so many questions now that we don't have the opportunity to answer all of them, but I do try to pay attention to persistence. If you write in and your question doesn't get answered, ask the question again and I notice it and I go, we got to make sure that we answer that question. So please do write in. We also encourage you when you go to autism-live.com, about 5 seconds after you're on the page, a box will spring up and it'll say, hey, wouldn't you like to subscribe? And I know, we don't want to be subscribing to everything in the world, right? But I just want you to know that when you subscribe, it means that on Monday morning, you will get a postcard from us in your email that tells you all the guests that are going to be on the show. And occasionally we will send an extra message telling you when we've booked somebody that we didn't know on Monday, because sometimes that happens. And often those are like really fun people. So I encourage you to please subscribe. And we promise that we won't inundate you with ridiculous email. How's that for a promise? But thrilled to be here, and I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to give you a programming note that tomorrow evening at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific Time, and please do the math in the other time zones, Autism Live is going to be participating in a tweet-a-thon for the show Everyone's Going to Be Okay. You know that we had one of the guests on last week with her service dog, and we had such a good time, and you know that I love this show, and I'm so excited about this show being on Freeform. So we're going to be sitting with the cast and several other really cool people, like Kobe Bird from Lock and Key is going to be there with us tweeting. We're going to be doing that live tomorrow night from Freeform Studios. So be watching us on our Twitter feed, be watching the show with us, be, you can be reading the tweets that we're doing with the cast, and we'll be posting on Facebook pictures of the behind the scenes of the tweet-a-thon for Everyone's Going to Be Okay. That's tomorrow night. But now, let's waste no more time. It's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Traven has reminded me that everything's going to be okay. I watch the show and I love the show and I feel like it should be everyone, but it's everything. Everything's going to be okay. It's a great show, Freeform. Make sure that you check it out. But right now, we're here with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, and so thrilled to be here with you. Thank you so much For those of you who don't know Dr. Grant-Pichet, she's a true visionary in the field of autism. I believe the preeminent expert in the field of autism in our time, and there is no other time in this community. So we're so thrilled that we have an opportunity to be here with her for this next hour. She's here answering your questions in all the different ways that Traven showed you that you could. A lot of people.
Forward to it.
Yeah, well, we're so thrilled to have you here. We do like to remind everybody that there is no expert in any field that could give individually specific advice in this format. So you will write in and be as specific as you can, and please tell us what the closest major city is that you're in so that we can reference resources. And then Dr. Grant-Pichet will give you a lot of information. We love to take a tour of her beautiful mind. And then you take that information and go back to the experts who have eyes on the situation, and maybe you'll get a little bit further. You'll have more ideas.
That's right, exactly. No problem. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we can help a little bit with some of these questions.
Okay, so I want to start with a question that came in yesterday on our live feature, by the way. Hi, I love your show. I'm from UK and currently hiring some psychology students to be trained by my BCBA and then work with my kid. What do you think the ideal candidate would be, and what do you look for during interviews?
Right, that's a great question. I think actually we used to have, I'm not sure if it's still on there, but we used to have a section on our website that kind of defined the ideal candidate. But I think what you're looking for is not so much their, I think, we tend to look for too much in a person. And so I would say the things that are easier to teach, believe it or not, are just the therapy and how to do ABA and how to be a good therapist. Like the clinical portion is easy to do these days because we, for example, have produced Institutes for Behavior Training, IBT, where you can put someone on there and they can learn and they will get trained and really learn how to be a good therapist, right? So it's not about the clinical knowledge, it's really, and you have a BCBA who's going to be training them as well, but I think it has to do with energy. So you want a person who has a lot of energy, because I don't know your child's age, but you really have to have energy because you need to be able to run around and be fun and positive and energetic, rewarding, all of that. So energy is very important, and I think consistency is very important. So you really want someone dependable. You want to look for a history of someone who's been able to hold down a job, have good references, doesn't get sick often, doesn't cancel, because this is going to be someone you really depend on.
Yeah.
So you want them to really be there for your child and for you when you need them. As long as you have someone who's going to show up, is really responsible and has energy and just sort of interest in your child, you're good. The rest of the stuff you can teach.
I love that. I used to say, because I never have hired therapists. I never had to. I got lucky that I got to come to CARD, and CARD sent the therapist to our door. And I met and worked with a lot of different therapists over the 5 years that my son was getting therapy. And one of the things that I noticed about the therapist that I really loved, the sort of running theme, it's you called it energy, but I said it's somebody who's passionate about something.
Yeah.
And that many times people came in and started doing therapy and they weren't passionate about psychology, they weren't passionate about autism, they weren't passionate about any of that, but they were passionate about other stuff. Like I can think of one person in particular who was all about music. Mm-hmm. Music was their passion. They were like so about music. But I saw that passion is transferable.
Yeah, passion is so interesting.
And that when they saw your kid starting to learn, then they got passionate about teaching your child and having your kid learn things.
Right.
So I just in general like to be around, we all have friends who are Eeyores, right? And I love an occasional Eeyore too.
Sure.
But to work with your kid, I like somebody passionate.
You need a Tigger.
Right. Exactly.
You need a Tigger.
Oh my goodness, that's
very
it.
Enthusiastic and kind of like energized, because realistically it's a lot of demand. A good ABA program is like intensive tutoring for all day long. So you need someone who's going to be very exciting and able to reward well and entertaining for your child.
Absolutely, a Tigger. That's wonderful. I love that. So hire a Tigger,
Yeah.
and then you'll be in good shape.
Really well trained.
That's right. Get them really good training. And your BCBA will be there to help you, but you can also subscribe to videos on IBT, help them to become a registered behavior technician, or at least get that coursework done.
Yeah,
It's
I really
very
do
inexpensive.
recommend that. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, and also, I mean, you know, I've been doing this for 100 years, but I can go back and always listen to IBT, and there's always some really good gem.
Yeah.
And the IBT videos are fantastic. Like, they get you thinking on topics separately in a way that you don't usually get in college.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, as a BCBA, you learn a lot of technical stuff, but the IBT videos, they give you all the technical stuff if you go into the, like, let's say RBT or BCAT portion. But they also give it to you in a very lay terminology if you
Yeah.
go into the parent or teacher portion. So it's kind of, I think it's a good mix. You become much better rounded, well-rounded if you've listened to.
And of course, we keep referring to it as IBT. It's the Institute for Behavioral Training, and you go to ibehavioraltraining.com.
Right.
And having said that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with more Ask Dr. Doreen here on Autism Live after these messages.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Life-threatening aspects of autism. Unfortunately, autism can be a life-threatening condition. There are things that are associated with it that parents need to know about. First of all, there's the risk of seizure. It's heightened in people with autism. There's also the risk of what they call elopement, which means basically running away. Elopement can lead to things like exposure, drowning if they get near bodies of water, and maybe being hit by cars. Being hit by cars is certainly something that seems to be emerging as a problem in people with autism. So what do? We have to take certain steps to keep them safe to start. That means at home. Let's look around the home first. Where are your points of entry? Barriers, doors, windows, access to bodies of water, gates, fences. You have to look at school, because people with autism can sometimes elope from school or things like that, daycare. So you have to make sure that it is written into their plan, wherever they are, that people are going to be responsible. That may include a tracking device. For some people with autism or Asperger's, a tracking device might be useful. It might help people know where they are, so in case someone has taken them a place that they shouldn't be taken, kind of trick them. Sometimes you get that happening with your teenagers, or they're just a child that's unable to communicate or speak very well, and you need to know where they are. Consider that. There's a new generation of tracking devices. It can go in their shoe, can go in their jean, maybe in a cell phone. And I would also add that one of the most life-threatening aspects of autism is sadly being bullied, socially excluded, things like that. That's always happening in people with autism spectrum disorder. People bully them, exclude them. The risk of suicide is unfortunately very high. So do not be afraid to probe, ask uncomfortable questions, see what's happening. Even if they don't tell you, you need to ask other people at school what they know, what they've seen. Even though it's an uncomfortable thing, we do need to be aware that this is a very dangerous situation at times. Be very, very vigilant. Stay upbeat, be positive, and realize no one person and no one family can keep a child with autism safe all by themselves. Get the support you need, look around, be vigilant. It's better to take steps you feel that you don't need too soon than too late.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, and she's answering your questions in real time. Another question that we had come in. Hi, thank you so much for the show. I find it so helpful and love the can-do attitude.
That's
we love
great.
that. I work with a child who has escape behaviors. When given an instruction, he runs around the classroom. He's quick and strong, and the behavior technician is unable to stop him. He ends up getting away with tasks, even if it's only for a few minutes. Now I have the behavior technician stand right near him with her hand on his arm when giving an instruction, but he is still quicker than her and still runs away. We also do lots of choices and allowing escape if he asks appropriately. We do high P request sequence, but he stopped complying with easier tasks. Although his behavior did decrease, it is no longer decreasing. Any ideas?
Change your behavior tech.
Ah!
I'm sorry, but like this is a really basic escape or avoidance situation. You cannot let him escape, period. As long as he escapes, it's going to be, that's what he's shooting for. So, the way that we used to do it in the past, and I don't know if you can in the classroom, these are the difficulties of teaching in a classroom,
Yep.
honestly, Shannon.
Yep.
Is that we would literally have the table in a corner with the child behind it so that they cannot escape.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some of the stuff, like you can use the environment in a way to set it up so that the child cannot run off.
Yeah.
But you have to work with the teacher and make that happen. But the bottom line here is it's not about making it a more easier task or one that is a high probability of happening. That's not what this is about. This is about he's going to escape.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure he doesn't escape. You know this. It's very clear that the person who wrote this has a good understanding of functions of behavior, and so you have to block the escape.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't understand all that, I mean,
is not always the right thing to do. Here in this case, I don't know that you need to start thinking about different ways of educating the child just because he's not sleeping well. I think you need to deal with why isn't he sleeping well? Let's fix the sleep issue. And so the sleep issue is a very, very extremely important one. Like I cannot stress how the importance of this sleep thing enough. Like I just can't, because people forget, this is one of the things about autism, is that it's so overwhelming, and it just overshadows everything else that's going on with our kids, with us, with anyone. And sleep is a very, very vital part of every organism's functioning. So if you were to not sleep, which I'm sure a lot of parents will be like, I don't sleep because my child won't let me sleep. Your functioning just decreases, right? You just don't want it. You get depressed over time. You're not motivated. You don't want to go to work. Even when you're at work, you're barely making it. You're probably drinking a lot of caffeinated drinks to just keep going. It's not good, right? So with our kids, it's sort of the same thing. If they're not getting quality sleep, we have to deal with that. So what are some of the things that you need to think about with regards to sleep? First of all, obviously you should do a functional assessment, because you do want to figure out oh my gosh, there's so many reasons. I'm going to name just a few. So the diet of the child has impact on the child's sleep. So if the child's getting a lot of sugar or dye or whatever, it could, for instance, have something to do with keep the child awake. If their child is on any medications that could potentially be like hyperactivity medications, ADHD meds tend to really, really influence our sleep. So food, medication, and then of course we have other types of things going on with autism. Some of our kids have very, very significant yeast infections that could be interfering with their sleep. So all that kind of biological, like things that have to do with biochemistry of the organism, the person. So all of that is one. The second area to look at is environmental factors. So like there could be sensory things going on that you're not even aware of. For example, the sprinklers turn on at 2 in the morning and nobody else hears them, but your child has very sensitive hearing and he hears them. So There could be environmental sensory factors that you're not aware of, like the neighbor's dog wakes up at 4 in the morning, whatever it is that is waking your child up and interfering with sleep. There's also other types of biological factors, such as your child could be having seizures that you're not aware of that could be waking him up in the middle of the night. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, like you need to have a physician who is a specialist in sleep. I don't know where you live, but a lot of universities have sleep programs where your child will go in there and they'll do a 24-hour sleep EEG, where they will actually put those receptors onto your child and actually see brainwave activity during sleep and figure out what is causing the child to wake up. The other aspect of it, of course, is it could be just something that is a learned behavior. For example, a lot of times when our kids wake up, when they're babies, what we tend to do is we'll go in there and give them a bottle, right? And a bottle is food, and food is one of the most significant reinforcers. It's a primary reinforcer. So what happens is the stomach actually becomes conditioned to wake up at that time. That's why it's really, really important when you wake up at night not to eat, because when you do eat, you will, I swear to you, try this yourself, wake up, if you wake up at 2 or 3, a lot of us at this age, at least we wake up to go to the bathroom, right? If you eat something, I promise you, it'll become a habit immediately, almost in 2 nights. From there on, you'll be waking up. So check those types of things. When the child wakes up, is there any source of reinforcement, whether it be food, or perhaps the child comes to you and sleeps with you, that's a big reinforcer, or the child calls and you go to the child, that's a big reinforcer. So those types of things are learned behaviors that can be changed. So first, I want you to check out the biological stuff, seizures being the most important, anything else that biologically could interfere with your child's sleep. Secondly, I want you to check out things like dietary and any other type of food or stimulant. Third, I want you to look at the environment and make sure it is quiet and dark. Darkness is very important. Darkness is how we produce melatonin. If there's light in the room at night, we're not producing melatonin, which our body needs to sleep. And then when you've done all that, you need to really look at learned behaviors. And are you, without being aware of it, rewarding your child when they wake up somehow? And that portion, of course, of BCBA can help you. I'm pretty sure there's got to be some training on this in the IBT website about sleep. We have lots and lots of ways to reduce this waking up activity. So now I've kind of talked a lot about sleep. Hopefully that's the issue here and not just homeschooling.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, if it isn't, let me just say I have nothing against homeschooling. I think homeschooling is totally fine as long as the child has social environments and opportunities as well.
There we go. I love this question that came in on YouTube. Why is ABA so expensive? Insurance will not pay for it. If they do, it's not much. Cannot get Medicaid because of income cutoffs. So how can you get the help you need if the cost is $85,000 to $95,000?
Right.
And of course, I have a lot to say about that. What do you want to say?
Insurance does pay for it. That's the first thing I'll say. So yes, it's very expensive because every hour is provided by a trained individual. So yes, it adds up. I'm not sure that it adds up to 85, but it adds up because every hour of therapy costs a lot. Having said that, there's insurance coverage. So I'm not sure where you live, but we have insurance coverage in pretty much the entire United States.
50 states. Not all the same, but 50 states have coverage.
50 states have coverage. So let us know where you are, and we can help you gain access to that coverage.
And I also want to say, the first year that my son was at CARD and got his 40-hour program, we were funded, this is before insurance, we were funded by the state of California, but they sent you a bill later on that you didn't have to pay, but they just were like, we want you to know how much we spent on you. $120,000 the first year. So just saying, but that year made the difference that set us on the path. It didn't finish it, but it set us on the path to be in the best possible place. So,
That's right.
So we the number gets scary and you feel that, and then you just go, what we did was we looked around and we were like, we can't afford this, so what are other people doing?
Yeah.
And I would walk up to people and say, how are you paying? I like go to an autism thing, go, how are you paying for it?
Yeah.
And people would show us. I guarantee you there are hundreds of thousands of parents that are finding the way right now in every single state that there is. And sometimes you got to piece it together, but there's a way. So tell us which state that you're in. And also know that the Medicaid thing, depending on where you are, most of the time now parents will have to apply for Medicaid, and they apply and they get refused because of their income. Then you reapply under disability and your child will get Medicaid because your child has autism. So they are eligible, but they
Yes.
ask you to, they make you jump through the first hoop and then you jump through the second hoop. But Medicaid in all states is not equal and even.
Well, it hasn't rolled out in all states.
So-
like, we don't even have Medicaid in New York yet. Like, it hasn't rolled out in all states. But yes, but it is there. The other thing I want to say, Shannon, is that, you know, we talk about insurance will cover it, but insurance will cover it up to a certain portion. And
Yes.
that you are right in the sense that if you have an older child, if your child has already received a couple of years of ABA, it is harder to get insurance to cover it. And that, I mean, I don't know that there's any kind of solution for that. But what I do want to say is that it's sort of maybe it helps parents realize the value of doing really intensive ABA for a few years, because more and more, and Shannon, you and I have been talking about this for years, when insurance coverage started, I predicted that we would get to a point, and we have unfortunately come to that point, where it is really difficult to get ongoing funding. So when you do get funding from an insurance company, please use it.
Oh my
Please
gosh.
don't waste it. Please don't cancel sessions, because you will have it for a very kind of limited period of time. That is your child's window of opportunity. And when you have it for, let's say, 2 to 3 years, and I promise you, it will get less. Right now, we're probably looking at, like, most payers with a really strong recommendation from your BCBA will, and as long as your child is like younger than 6 or 8, will give you 3 to 4 years of not intensive, but like you'll probably be able to get like 2 years of 40 hours a week, followed by maybe 1 to 2 years of 15 to 20 hours a week, which is a really good amount, but that amount is going to decrease. So really, like, if you are a parent with a child right now getting this therapy, please do it. Make sure your child benefits from it.
It's a use it or lose it situation.
It's a use it or lose it gold that expires after a while.
Absolutely.
Like, really think about that.
Absolutely. But I also want to say to the other person, we're finding parents in different places that are finding different programs. Even if we've had parents who held a fundraiser to be able to get the insurance and then got grants for the copay.
That's right.
People are finding the way. You won't be inventing a wheel. Reach out to us, tell us where you are, and I'll see what I can do to find out who's making it work where you are and what they're doing. And we can work together to make it happen. Where there's a will, there's a way. I learned that a long time ago. And listen, if I could figure it out, then you for sure can figure it out.
Absolutely.
And I'll work with you to figure it out, right? So you can write into me, s.penrod@autism-live.com. Let's take a short break. And then I want to take a question from a dad who says that they're emigrating from Egypt to Florida and want some info from you. So stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I am here with Dr. Doreen for a segment we call Ask Dr. Doreen. It's Dr. Doreen Grandpichet that I'm here with. Yes, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Where were you right now?
You know what? You know where I was? You said something and I had an idea and it
will you please write it down? Because I need ideas on that.
No, I
subject.
totally, no, that's exactly where I was. Okay, so now I'm here. I'm here with you, all of you right now. Okay, so we've been taking live questions for Dr. Grandpichet, and we had something come in on YouTube. A dad who said, I need to ask Dr. Doreen, we're a family with a 7-year-old autistic boy emigrating from Egypt to Florida. As a father, I'm communicating with one of the autism centers in Tampa. But unfortunately, we were informed that my son has to be on a waiting list for almost 1 year. Please advise, how can we avoid that? We do not want to waste my son's time staying at home.
Yeah. So I don't know what's in Tampa. We're not in Tampa. I don't know if there's another center in Tampa, but I think you just need to, and I don't know how good the funding is in Florida right now. I mean, I know there's funding, but I'm not sure how good it is.
What we hear as parents is that supposedly Medicaid is in place, but they've made it so difficult that no provider can actually qualify.
Yeah.
So it's this catch-22 that Florida says, oh, no, we made it available, but they didn't.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I remember.
They made it so hard that, and that there are a couple of providers. And this is just what I hear. I'm not necessarily, I agree with this, but I hear that there are a couple of providers that are not doing a great job and are getting paid so little that they are not having quality people there, and the people are leaving because they're getting paid so little, and this is a hard job.
That's right.
So
I think the one organization that is there is Butterfly Effects, if I'm not wrong. I really don't know much about that, but what I will say is, if you have the option to move someplace else, you should probably first find a location that has really good funding and a really good provider, an organization that can provide good ABA for your child. I think that becomes primary. But if you don't have a choice, then obviously you should be researching what your options are in Tampa right now. And there is funding. There's commercial insurance as well in Florida, and I just don't know, because we're not in Tampa, I don't know enough about that.
Well, and I will say that we keep hearing about waiting lists across the country. So before you go to some place that has a lot of providers, check their waiting list too.
Yes.
But for the parents that are on the waiting list, waiting a year is not tenable, right? Like it's just not something.
right. That's
Early
right.
intervention is the key. We all know that. I know it's the seventh ring of you know where for parents who hear early intervention is important, but now you stand in line for 2 years to get the diagnosis, and then you stand in line to get started with a reputable ABA company, right? And now you've lost 3 years, which was the window of time that we most,
That's exactly
wanted to get in there.
Right.
So it isn't. You got to come up with something else.
That's right.
Whether it's that you put together a program yourself, which is really hard, but there are tools to do that.
Yes.
You could use skills for autism.com. You could use the Institute for Behavioral Training. You yourself can take classes and become online classes and become an RBT so that you know what you're doing. You could train other people. Whatever you have to do, you don't want to let the year go by.
That's right. I think that's very, very important.
All right. So I don't like that answer.
I know. I mean, we
But it's
can't.
the
It's
answer.
like it is what it is. We could help maybe do some research for you on Tampa, but I just don't know what's available there.
Yeah. Another person has written in on Facebook and said, what can I say to parents who have a big issue with ABA? Saying that the older autistic community detests it and have found it to be abusive. I don't agree with this at all. I'm an RBT, which is a registered behavior technician, and a mom of an 11-year-old with autism. So it's almost, we're gearing up for April, and this will go in April,
that's
because
right.
there will be lots of articles that say that ABA is abusive and that adults on the spectrum say it's terrible and that parents should not do it.
That's amazing to me. So, first thing is, from someone who's been doing ABA for 40 years, ABA has changed a lot. I mean, there was a time back in the 60s, I want to say, and early 70s, where aversives were used as part of ABA. And there was an article with Lovas, actually, back in, I want to say, the early 60s. It was kind of in Life magazine, and it had to do with the use of electric shock to kind of get children who were self-injurious to stop self-injuring. There used to be a lot of types of interventions as part of ABA that are no longer allowed, even legal, present, like they just don't exist. There's one or two sites still in the whole country, the Judge Ruttenberg Center. There are places where they do still use aversives, but I have to say that in 99.9% of programs, you're not going to have any use of negative punishment or anything that's aversive in any way. So that stigma of that it's like abusive is gone. Like it just is not. So that's that. Now, if you are a parent where you feel that any kind of demand or contingency is not what you want for your child, then ABA is not for you. What ABA is, very, very in sort of basic general terms, is that you identify a whole ton of stuff that the child needs to learn that they've not learned for whatever reason. And the way that you teach all those things is you give an instruction, you model or prompt or help the child however you can. The child follows through on the instruction, and you reward it. When the child doesn't follow through on the instruction, you modify the instruction, you give a little bit more help, you modify the environment, but you give reward. So ABA is very, very based on the giving and withholding of rewards. That's about as abusive as it gets. But now when a child you have to understand that if a child is doing something that you don't want, if they're exhibiting a behavior that you don't want, you withhold the reward. So that means you could very likely have a child who's 2 years old and screaming and crying, or 3 years old, or 5 years old, whatever, screaming and crying because they want something, and you don't give it to them because they're screaming and crying. If you consider that to be abusive, then you're right, ABA is not for you. But other than that, like the holding off of rewarding challenging behavior, there's nothing at all abusive about ABA. And it is very structured. It is demanding. The reason it's demanding is that you know, you have to, it's more effective the younger the child, because our brains are very malleable to change between the age of 2 and 7. So it's really important that ABA, all the intensity of ABA occur around that age. So we are working with very young children, and what we're trying to do is to get them to learn a large amount of stuff. So there's a lot of demand placed on young children, but like even with a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old who's getting what we call a 40-hour program, there's tons of breaks and games and rewarding activities throughout the whole thing. So if you're doing a really good ABA program, it is a fun activity. It might be a little difficult in the beginning for your child. Please, I don't want to mislead people. Kids are not always happy in the beginning, but once they understand the contingencies, it becomes fun, and it should become fun, and it should become, the level of demand is balanced out by the level of reward. And if the child doesn't enjoy it, that means there's not enough reward or too much demand. And when you balance those things together, the child generally thrives. So, you know, it has changed a lot. We look at the functions of behaviors. That's something that has only really come about in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years. So it's improved a lot. It's really, we're starting to get a lot more understanding of how we work with kids. You know, those are I guess the things that you, and then of course, if you want to show your family or try to get your family to understand how effective it is, how good it is, I would really recommend that you look at certain films. Like we made a film years ago called Recovered. You can access that film on Amazon, and I would order that DVD, and I would show it to your family, because they need to understand that the value of all of this intensive teaching is great. It's lifelong value.
It's amazing. It's miraculous. I want to say that I was a parent who was told by my developmental pediatrician who diagnosed my son, she said, don't do ABA.
Yeah.
They'll turn him into a robot, and they'll torture him to get him to speak. And I listened to her for 6 months, and when I could have been in early intervention, and I had people all around me saying, reconsider, and I was like, no, because they're not going to torture my child.
Yeah.
I don't know, if you have met me, I mean, if you spend any time on the show, you know that I am a mama bear, and like nobody's going to hurt my child while I stand by, right? Like that is just not, and I am that mother who is way, helicopter, forget it. I'm like the armor suit on him, right? So, but I met a family who showed me what their kiddo was doing, and they said, no, like these people are the most amazing people on the face of the earth, and CARD is this place where miracles happen, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna look at this, I'm gonna do this, and I met more and more families whose kids were doing really well, and that's why I came to CARD. Here's my philosophy about this now. I am so proud that I have so many friends who are adults who are on the autism spectrum, and they don't like ABA.
Right.
And it's either because they had it and they experienced something negative, or because they had a friend who did, and so they believe that friend, or there was somebody who had a frustrating experience with ABA, and so they stopped.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I always say to people, I will never take away somebody's right to tell their story.
Right.
Tell your story. You know, you have a right to your story, and if that happened to you, I am never going to say, But I'm going to tell the part of the story where I tell people that now there's a governing board.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the people that you're working with, the board certified behavior analysts, they are held to strict rules, and they are not allowed to do those aversive things that Dr. Grant-Pichet was mentioning happened all that long. So, you know, while that might have happened to someone who's in their 30s, it was not happening to anybody right now if they are a licensed ABA provider and have board certified behavior analysts, and you can check to make sure that your people are board certified, but they would lose their license if they did anything like that. So it's important to know that. But the other side, because then parents start doing ABA, and in the beginning their child might be frustrated or you know, and crying and tantruming, and behavior might get a little bit worse before it gets better. That's all sort of typical. And what somebody said to me was, look, and my son recently had said to me, frustration never killed anybody, right? But when our kids start to walk, they trip and they fall and they hit their head and they, hit their head on the coffee table and now they're bleeding and they're crying and whatever. And we don't go, you know what, this is too hard, let's stop.
Yeah.
Let's not upset the child, forget
Right.
it, wheel in the wheelchair, we're not walking.
Right.
We don't
Right.
do that because we know
It's a great example.
they're gonna get through this period of time, and when they do, it's gonna be worthwhile.
That's right, that's
and I'm
right.
telling you that frustration that your kiddo might be feeling in the beginning, it goes away very quickly. I had
Absolutely.
the happiest little camper who is the happiest teenager, who has his whole life in front of him and can make the choices that he needs to make because we allowed for him. Look, they are going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
They are absolutely going to get frustrated because their way of doing things is I scream, yell, throw things, bite you, and I get my way.
Right.
And the reason why we don't want that is because that's not working for them and it's
That's
not
right.
working for you.
Right.
So we have to allow them to be frustrated with the fact that it's
Exactly.
not working this way anymore. Anybody would be frustrated, but it's amazing that moment when they get it and they go, oh, you mean I can just point to this picture and I can get what I want instead of throwing myself on the floor and biting you? And you see that moment where they go, oh, this is so much easier.
Exactly.
And they become happier.
Exactly.
So I'm always trying to explain that to parents and say, and I had two, I think I've already talked about this on the show, two people last week. The one mom who wrote into me that her child had started with CARD and like it was so hard and he was so frustrated.
my
He
gosh.
was throwing up. Because he was so frustrated, and she was like, "We're not going to do this full program. I don't know that we're going to do this anymore." And and I said, "Don't give up, don't give up." And she wrote to me and she said,
Thank you.
he's thank you. She was like, "Oh my gosh, she's on track to be a kid that this isn't going to be a lifelong thing for him."
Yes.
And she was like, "Thank you for not letting me miss out on this
That's
other
like
thing."
the most important thing, is
Right?
not giving up during when it gets really tough. Yeah.
And the other mom who watches the show frequently, and she knows who I'm talking about, but that her little finally revved up to a 40-hour program because they had been at 30, and she wrote to me and said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe the difference that 10 hours is
Really?
making, that he's sleeping better,
Oh
that
my
our
gosh.
family time is better, that he's learning exponential." And I'm always trying to explain to a parent, because a parent will say, "Well, I don't see what the difference between 17 hours and 27 hours is." And I'm like, really? Because it's compound interest. If you understand compound interest, because it isn't just 10 hours, it's 10 hours this week where you learn this much more.
Yep.
So you go into the next week with this much more knowledge. Now you add 10 more. So now you're like this going into the third week. By the fourth week, it's amazing.
It's so funny. Like, I had not even thought about the fact that it could also just help improve sleep.
And I
Because
love
the child
that she
gets
said
tired.
that.
Yes, I know. And it's so incredible. I mean, and this is the kind of stuff that just concerns me and worries me, because honestly, as time goes by, I see how, there used to be a time, Shannon, when I opened CARD, and every child that came in was a young child, and I would be giving them 40 hours. That was the program. And as time went on, it was like, okay, older kids are coming in. We can't say no, but it's not appropriate for them to do 40 hours. Maybe we'll do a little bit less, and so on. And now it's just so difficult to get people to do the full regimen. First of all, as I said, funding is limited.
Yeah.
And secondly, people are not committed to it. People
Yeah.
are just not committed to it. And it's the prescription. You know?
Exactly.
It's
That's exactly the word I always use with parents. Find out what your full prescription is, and that's the number that the person who diagnosed said, this is what this person needs, and then do that. Your insurance will pay the full prescription for at least that first year.
So
you're crazy to turn it down.
Absolutely.
And every child is different prescription, right?
Absolutely. And that's my other issue, is that most of the time, first of all, the person who prescribes is not going to be your BCBA. They're different people. And so the people who prescribe are psychologists, and they know nothing about ABA. So the people who prescribe or diagnose are not going to know. Your BCBA is also not necessarily going to prescribe a full program, because they're just not they've not experienced recovery. There are so many young BCBAs in the world that they don't know necessarily what the difference is between 25 and 40 hours. And so that is something that I'm like sort of committed to trying to teach our folks as well. It's like, you know, if you do have a young child, and by young I mean, you know, starting before the age of 6, please give the child an opportunity to have a 40-hour program, even if it's just for 6 months. It's so important.
I always say I want to light my hair on fire and run down the street, and maybe I'm going to have to do that to draw attention to it, because so, you know, for me as a parent who came in a moment of time when there was no funding other than where I lived.
Oh, yes.
Right? And I lucked out. And man, I know how lucky I am, and I am grateful every day and trying to give back, right? But we fought so hard, and I did not think in my lifetime we would have insurance.
Right.
And then we got insurance, and what's happened is that it's a whole lot more people talking to the parent going, you don't need that.
Yeah.
You know, 12 hours is
Right.
enough. Like,
Right.
don't. And parents are saying no, not even knowing what they're missing out
Right.
on.
Right.
Because it seems unreasonable. I do recall
It's true.
the parent saying to me, you know, somebody said to me, oh, well, you know, a 40-hour program with a 3-year-old has found to be wildly effective. And I was like, 40 hours? He's 3. That's crazy. That's a full-time job.
I know.
And then the parent was like, I know, but it works. So just
Yep,
do it anyway.
yep.
Like, and, you know, and I'm here to tell the tale. Yeah, it works.
Yep.
We had the meeting yesterday with his college counselor about which colleges we're applying to. Don't tell me.
Oh my
It
gosh.
works. It
Oh
works.
my
So do
gosh.
it. Okay. So Missy has written in on YouTube and says, can ABA help to reduce aggressive behavior like hitting, kicking, biting, scratching, etc. in an older child who is 8, 9, or 10 years old, and how do they change this behavior?
Yes, Missy. So first of all, that's it's funny that your name is Missy. You're the second Missy I've ever met. The first Missy would be Dr. Missy Olive, who is a wonderful behavior analyst, and she actually is really, really good with older kids and adults. So if you can find her, maybe get in touch with Missy Olive. But yes, ABA is focused on 2 things. One is teaching new skills, and one is reducing challenging behaviors. And so the way that we do that is different based on the function of the behavior. What that means is every behavior has a reason why it occurs, and that's the function. And once you identify the reason why that behavior occurs, you are able to replace that behavior with a much better, more appropriate type of behavior. For example, a child will generally not hit just because hitting is something pleasurable. They will hit because either they want to get attention for it, or they're trying to escape a situation, or they're trying to gain access to a tangible object. Those are examples of functions. If I am a child and I'm hitting you because I want to get something from you, then the way that ABA would reduce the hitting or eliminate the hitting is to make sure that when you hit, you do not get the object, but we would then teach you to ask, and then you get the object. And so over time, the child learns hitting is ineffective, asking is effective. That's a very basic example of how ABA deals with all of these behaviors. Every dysfunctional, challenging behavior that you listed there, Missy, has a reason. I always talk about challenging behaviors. They are a type of communication from our kids. Our children are trying to say something by hitting, by biting, by throwing. They're trying to say something. They're trying to say, I want more of something, or I don't want something. And that's really important to understand. And through ABA, we have this thing called a functional assessment that your supervisor first conducts, and through that they learn why each behavior occurs, and then we modify environmental things and we get rid of those behaviors and we teach appropriate behaviors. And let me say, people often think that ABA has to do with very young children. There are thousands and thousands of articles published on how ABA works to reduce challenging behavior in adults. Many more publications having to do with challenging behavior in adults than recovery of young children or effectiveness with young children. Everybody knows about EIBI, Early Intensive Behavior Intervention, just because it's miraculous. You know, you teach, like as Shannon was saying, it's just you take a child with very little skill and you teach them everything they need to function as a normal adult. But with the adults who have these sort of ingrained challenging behaviors, ABA is incredibly effective. It's unbelievable. And I'm talking about sometimes you just working with adults, like one of the very rewarding things for me was adults I knew who were so aggressive that they would, for instance, out of frustration, literally put their head through glass, you know, and that is like such a horrifying thing for everyone. And if you can teach an adult to not do that and instead to type on a keyboard something they want when they're frustrated, that is the most rewarding thing. And that's what ABA does. That is the power of ABA.
Absolutely. So we don't have time to fully answer this question, I know, because we've got about 3 minutes here. Amelia has written in on YouTube and says, what are the ways to increase speech for kids with autism?
Well, yeah, that's the time. I mean,
3 minutes.
Yeah, and so everything that we teach, you know, the vast majority of skills, like when you look at our website, Skills for Autism, you'll see that there's a whole section called language. It's more than just speech. It's a lot of lessons. The vast majority of our lessons are honestly that's our biggest curriculum, is the language curriculum. So. And it's too complicated, as Shannon said, but we take children who are nonverbal and we reward them producing just sound. And then we shape those sounds into words and we reward that. And then we teach the child to use those words functionally to request items. That's called manding, and then we reward that. And then we teach the child to expand on the words and form sentences using descriptors and adjectives and all that sort of stuff, and then that's rewarded. And then we teach the child to use those sentences to describe their environment, and that's rewarded, and to ask for things, and to, you know, and it just goes on and on and on. And all of these lessons sort of build on top of each other to produce communication, and then social communication, and then kind of we teach the child how verbal communication can be valuable to them. So it's a lot of like small lessons that are built on top of each other to produce speech and language, and it takes a lot of hours and a lot of years, and that's how ABA is used to teach speech. And there's a lot of videos on this subject, so I really recommend that you go on Autism Live. We'll have tons of videos there. But also online, and just ask that question and say, you know, ABA to teach language. You'll get tons of videos on YouTube, so you can see. I mean, you know, we used to have some films that would show the exact day-to-day video of that. I don't know what else we have that is out there.
We've got a bunch of different experts talking about growing language and doing that. And we'll plan a segment for that as well.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, we talk about this a lot when we're talking about the toys.
Yeah, of
course. You know, showing how you use bubbles, for instance, to get to a child to produce the sound of "buh," and then how you shape that into bubble. We talk about that with lots of the different toys. So.
I mean, a lot of the initial portion of speech has to do with manding, which is requesting, and because there's motivation. When the child is motivated to request juice, they will try to say ooh or joo or something, and that's the beginning of speech.
Absolutely. Okay, so we are totally out of time. We want to thank you for being here with us. I want to remind everybody that on tomorrow's show we have Larry Hauser from Fullerton Cares coming in for the first time. He's bringing his mom. She's the woman behind all the magic. Fullerton Cares is getting ready to have their Mardi Gras for autism that's happening on April 4th. I love that event, and so Larry's going to be here with us tomorrow. Then on Friday, Karen Nolte is going to be here with us talking about new research that is so exciting. So for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, Karen Nolte will be here on Friday. Don't forget that tomorrow night at 5:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific Time, 8:30 Eastern Time, Autism Live will be at Freeform Studios live tweet event for Everything's Gonna Be Okay, that wonderful hit show on Freeform. We're gonna be there with a lot of autism luminaries and stars with the cast of Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Wonderful show that has a character with autism being played by a young woman with autism. So let me tell you, it's controversial, this show. It is like, woo, fasten yourself in on the seatbelt. This is not your light, fluffy Disney stuff, although it's being done by Disney Freeform. So make sure that you check it out tomorrow night during the live East Coast feed of the show. We will be tweeting with the cast, and so be watching our Facebook to see pictures of us with the cast and watch the show. We're going to be back tomorrow. Until then, give yourselves a hug from me and for your kiddos as well. Bye-bye for now.